Chapter 56. Then 2 years more went by, or perhaps 3, for time passes imperceptibly in Tahiti, and it is hard to keep count of it, but at last a message was brought to Dr. Kutras that Strickland was dying. Ada had waylaid the cart that took the mail into Papeete, and besought the man who drove it to go at once to the doctor. But the doctor was out when the summons came, and it was evening when he received it. It was impossible to start at so late an hour, and so it was not till next day soon after dawn that he set out. He arrived at Taravao, and for the last time tramped the 7 kilometers that led to Ada's house. The path was overgrown, and it was clear that for years now it had remained all but untrodden. It was not easy to find the way. Sometimes he had to stumble along the bed of the stream, and sometimes he had to push through shrubs, dense and thorny. Often he was obliged to climb over rocks in order to avoid the hornet nests that hung on the trees over his head. The silence was intense. It was with a sigh of relief that at last he came upon the little unpainted house, extraordinarily bedraggled now and unkempt, but here too was the same intolerable silence. He walked up, and a little boy, playing unconcernedly in the sunshine, started at his approach and fled quickly away. To him the stranger was the enemy. Dr. Kutras had a sense that the child was stealthily watching him from behind a tree. The door was wide open. He called out, but no one answered. He stepped in. He knocked at a door, but again there was no answer. He turned the handle and entered. The stench that assailed him turned him horribly sick. He put his handkerchief to his nose and forced himself to go in. The light was dim, and after the brilliant sunshine for a while he could see nothing. Then he gave a start. He could not make out where he was. He seemed on a sudden to have entered a magic world. He had a vague impression of a great primeval forest and of naked people walking beneath the trees. Then he saw that there were paintings on the walls. "Mon Dieu, I hope the sun hasn't affected me," he muttered. A slight movement attracted his attention, and he saw that Ada was lying on the floor, sobbing quietly. "Ada," he called. "Ada." She took no notice. Again the beastly stench almost made him faint, and he lit a cheroot. His eyes grew accustomed to the darkness, and now he was seized by an overwhelming sensation as he stared at the painted walls. He knew nothing of pictures, but there was something about these that extraordinarily affected him. From floor to ceiling the walls were covered with a strange and elaborate composition. It was indescribably wonderful and mysterious. It took his breath away. It filled him with an emotion which he could not understand or analyze. He felt the awe and the delight which a man might feel who watched the beginning of a world. It was tremendous, sensual, passionate, and yet there was something horrible there, too, something which made him afraid. It was the work of a man who had delved into the hidden depths of nature and had discovered secrets which were beautiful and fearful too. It was the work of a man who knew things which it is unholy for men to know. There was something primeval there, and terrible. It was not human. It brought to his mind vague recollections of black magic. It was beautiful and obscene. "Mon Dieu, this is genius." The words were wrung from him, and he did not know he had spoken. Then his eyes fell on the bed of mats in the corner, and he went up, and he saw the dreadful, mutilated, ghastly object which had been Strickland. He was dead. Dr. Kutras made an effort of will and bent over that battered horror. Then he started violently, and terror blazed in his heart, for he felt that someone was behind him. It was Ada. He had not heard her get up. She was standing at his elbow, looking at what he looked at. "Good heavens, my nerves are all distraught," he said. "You nearly frightened me out of my wits." He looked again at the poor dead thing that had been man, and then he started back in dismay. But he was blind. Yes, he had been blind for nearly a year.